Okay, so I'm going to continue work on the Spitfire Mark 14C by Academy. It's a 1/72nd scale kit. So what I'm working on now is the fuselage assembly. So I've got the cockpit all together. The interior assembly is all put together. So that's a combination of stage 1, part 1, and part 2. And we've got that all put together. So this is all painted up here. I've dry fitted it a couple of times and it seems to be working just fine. Let's see what we can get here. It's a little much maybe. So sort of there. So it's worked out okay. Not the greatest detail like I had mentioned before, but it's sufficient. It's gone together nice. I've dry fit it a couple of times. Everything seems to be working fine. So now I have to cut out A4 off the sprue. So A4 happens to be somewhere. Let me just find that. A4, I believe, is on this somewhere. Okay, guys, you might have to help me find it. Oh, there it is. So it's this piece right here. So that's for the cockpit, or for the propeller. Obviously, it won't be a spinner type. And I think in a previous video, the one just before this, I had talked about being a kid and actually remembering how we used to use a heated blade, so commonly referred to as a hot knife. No, it's not for that. Basically what it was, go figure, it was pretty high-tech stuff back for the 60s and into the 70s. So what would happen is you would stick this piece through the propeller. And then on the other end, you would just take the knife and heat this end and it would stick. So you'd have a spinning propeller. Pretty nifty. But we're not doing that today. So what I'm doing is fitting this in just it's just gonna rest in there. And yeah, so I'm just going to put a little dab of glue, and let me just get that opened up. It's Tamiya, the thicker glue that I'll be using. So it's a thicker glue, so I'm just going to actually put that on first. So it's the slower drying, so it won't automatically dry up and leave me high and dry, so to speak. So I'm just going to let that rest. So the next part is actually going to be the interior. So that cockpit goes in there, and that is quite nice. So I'm still going to use the same glue, the thicker stuff. I'm not going to try and use the thin stuff, because it tends to dry too quickly on me and technically leaves me high and dry. Which makes it difficult. You know what, I think that's going to work fine. I think that's more or less where I want it. I'd say it's looking pretty good. So it's not going to be a spinner type of deal. I'm just going to dry fit to make sure this is, oh, look at that. That's sitting nice. That's sitting very nice. This section here might need a little more persuasion. But this is where I'm going to be using the Tamiya thin. Because what happens there, and I'll start from the bottom. So the Tamiya thin is this stuff here. Tamiya extra thin is what it's called. So just going to open it up and take it off a bit. And it's a really extra thin, just like the thing says. And I'm just going to leave that there. And you just more or less just paint it on a little bit at a time. Don't go crazy. But the other thing that it does is actually fills in any gaps. Not serious heavy gaps, but smaller ones. So I might need actually to use, that's a little small, so I'm just going to leave that bit there and get one of my sorry, I usually try and make sure that I'm all set and ready, and it doesn't always work out. But what I was going for, so I'm going to make sure get this back part, back part done up here. So it's just going to go along, and it's going to be a nice fit. So it makes it a nice kind of a fit here. And then I'm going to take this and run a bead along the top. Squeeze it together. And I'm actually going to use this clamp, which may be, yeah, touch bit too big. So maybe this little guy will work. Yes, it will. So I'm taking a clamp and I'm going to hold that together nicely. So I should only have to use the 2 clamps here, and that's going to hold it together kind of nicely. And as you can see, the fit's pretty good, especially underneath. There's no seams, and our blade is holding out good. So we let that piece just dry as is. Voila. So that allows us to finish part 3, the fuselage assembly. So what we are going to do next is move on. Once that dries up, we're going to be moving on to the engine exhaust assembly, which I'll show you how I usually paint that. I use a couple of different Tamiya paints. And then we're already into the wing assembly, and then we attach the wings. And at that point, I will start doing the full-out painting. of this kit. I've already primed it a gray, a light gray. Hard to tell because the kit actually does come with as a light gray. So I think it basically fit together quite nicely.